everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe Moore coming at you from Breckenridge, Colorado. Today on the show, we have Sarko, who is a police officer working out of kind of the Boston area. And we got to link up in downtown Boston. It's awesome. And talk about psychedelics, stress in law enforcement, kind of some cultural issues in law enforcement space. And then we really talk about, how do we discuss this with law enforcement today and see where, how can we make this a productive future to work with law enforcement, even perhaps before federal legalization, but, getting them ready also for legal frameworks like the MAPS protocol and things like that. So really, really a great program, I think. I had a great time with Sarko in Boston and really hope we can do it again. This idea of philosophy and law enforcement was a big theme, so look out for that. All right, everybody, enjoy this episode, and I can't wait to bring you the next episode. So see you on the other side. Bye. Here we are, Psychedelics Today. I'm in downtown Boston, right outside the Boston Garden, which is one of Boston's proudest locations. And we're here with Sarko. How do we say your last name? I didn't even get to ask you yet.
Gergerian.
Gergerian.
Nice.
So
Thank
close.
You. Yeah, it's all good.
That's awesome. So you are a law enforcement professional.
That's right.
Also a trained psychotherapist with MDMA training.
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing.
And ketamine.
Ketamine too.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah.
So before we dig in, let's do that disclaimer.
Okay. Yeah. So we're going to be touching upon a lot of topics here. Looking forward to the conversation. And I just want it noted that, these are my thoughts and my beliefs, and I'm representing myself here in these discussions.
Yeah. Great. Not your department, nobody else.
Right.
Great. Yeah.
Right.
Understood. Yeah. And cool. Glad to have that. So I guess let's go to first, like what made you take notice of MDMA psychotherapy?
The data generated by MAPS and all the researchers associated to that organization. In particular, I came across the phase 2 data at a Chiefs of Police conference in Florida. And when I saw, working from memory here, that like 67% of the participants no longer met the diagnostic criteria for PTSD, with it holding, a remission holding for quite some time, I had to know more. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you were able to sneak into a training cohort, and were you able to participate in a clinical trial at all?
Yes.
Oh.
It's funny you use that word sneak, because I like to use the Jungian term synchronicity. So many different things had to line up so perfectly for all of this to happen. I mean, can you imagine? But yeah, I got into one of the first training cohorts through MAPS to go through their curriculum, the 100-hour curriculum, which led to an experiential opportunity through a federally sanctioned research protocol for our,
Nice.
Yeah, I say 120 healthy normals, and I go like this, with the bunny ears.
I get it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So I kind of want to rewind the tape and kind of profile you a little more. So you seem like you're originally from Massachusetts.
I am. How do you know? Just the way I sound?
Guess,
Yeah.
So,
That's great.
and you went to Northeastern.
Yep.
And we got to chat about this a little bit. You did, what was your program there?
So I started off in psychology. What ended up happening is I took so many philosophy and religion classes that my major ended up being a philosophy and religion major with a huge minor in psychology, one lab shy. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good blend.
Yeah.
It's super similar to me, except I just did all my psychology study personally and with a couple mentors outside of the university.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So fascinated the whole time. It's how can you, is philosophy psychological enough I think it's a big question. And then vice versa. Is psychology philosophical enough?
Yeah.
I think the answer is no on both sides. Right. So we have to study both kind of. And
I agree. I agree. Yeah. I was struggling with big meaning questions, you know, and the heavily behavioral program that I was in, it was getting so detail oriented, you know, tracking how many times the rat presses the lever. And I'm still wondering, like, what is the meaning of life, and what's a human being supposed to be and do in this existence, you know? So that's when I started going that way. Yeah.
Important. And good. It's not like we at BU or Northeastern would teach like Jungian psychology as a whole degree program, right? We need something super credible, but might leave people with a little question about meaning.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And, you know, what just went through my mind is when I finished my master's work, they suggest that you go out into the field now and go deeper into the orientation that calls you, you know, your theoretical orientation, as you formulate that and go deeper into that and what it means. And I found myself going so deep into that. I'm at Pacifica Graduate Institute now in their Depth, Young, and Hillman graduate program.
Does Hillman teach there?
He used to.
Okay.
He used to. He's no longer with us. But they have his archives of all of his writings, which is thick and heavy stuff.
Yeah, we have a few people on the team I'd love to introduce you to that are big Hillman nerds.
All right.
Yeah, they love it. Love it.
All right. Yeah, I'd love to talk to him.
I think I've been exposed to some Hillman, not a ton yet though. But yeah, really great material, super helpful for sure. So how did you go from that to jumping into law enforcement?
Well, a thought I had a while back was wanting to help in the moment while things were happening.
Yeah.
And it's not too far of a jump to think policing will offer somebody that opportunity. Turns out it's true. But if we go even further back, I've always had this propensity or this pull towards stepping in between people who are having a problem, an argument, a fight, whatever it may be, and trying to help, which
avoid them coming to blows and whatnot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm realizing this now, and my MDMA experience helped really elucidate how my life was built through my personal experiences as well as transgenerational trauma. And I find it to be so fascinating because I'm always getting pulled into more and more dangerous situations. And now I have a little bit of insight into as to why that was playing out that way, you know. And it has to do with my lineage is transgenerational trauma, you know. I'm Armenian, so I find myself in this amazing country. I find safety here. You know, for me, this country is the land of opportunity and safety with a very complex history, right? For other people, the story's completely the opposite. I've had to deal with that tension in my heart as well, you know. But I'm here because of what happened on the native lands where my people live, right? And that was the Armenian genocide.
People don't know anything about it.
That makes my heart bleed.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it makes my heart bleed. Yeah. So like in 1915, it was a concerted effort to eradicate all the Armenians from their ancestral land in that part of the world by the Turks. They didn't succeed, but they did get 75% of us. Imagine. And the landmass that we're on right now is the size of Maryland. So, and Armenia lives on. But wow.
And just to help people geographically, roughly speaking, in between Greece and Turkey, was there some coastal exposure or?
So you have none at all, right? We're a landlocked country now, right over there. So you have Greece, Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia's landlocked. Yeah.
Yeah. So people, definitely learn about it. I have a guy I went to high school with who it's his big mission in life is just educating people that this even happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's still conflict like regularly over there. It's
not
not the calmest situation.
Oh yeah, no, and it's kind of it seems to be escalating. I mean, Azerbaijan is pressing in from one side right now, and last I heard, it was like over 100,000 Armenians were displaced from land that they were on and had to move into Armenia proper. You know what's interesting about the situation is you have the internationally recognized maps, right, where there's these lines drawn and stuff, and if you're outside of those lines, you know, you kind of end up in limbo land, even though that's ancestral land to the Armenians. You know, so it's pretty terrible what would happen.
Yeah, this is something I like to talk about too. Is, you know, how much of that is just part of human history everywhere. So like where yours is really fresh, like within the last, you know, 100 or so years, and where, you know, within the last 1,000 years, I think most of us have this in us.
Yeah, it can be a common struggle, right? And how did so many people end up migrating, or why? You know, when you trace it back, it's usually some kind of a very tragic situation, environmental situation. Yeah, there's a trauma.
Shared trauma. Yeah. So, well, that's interesting. Okay, so policing, and you saw that, and like being from here, you probably saw some role models where you were like, oh, okay, like that guy's actually amazing and he's law enforcement. Like I think I can do something similar and really help a lot of people.
So let me paint the edges of that a little bit. So I'm first generation. I was born here. You know, my father worked in downtown Boston as a meat cutter my whole life. You know, and I grew up in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and so my ideas around policing really came from TV and movies, and to say anything counter to that would be disingenuous. So I had a lot of ideas in my head, fantastic ideas from Hollywood, you know, but I'm grateful for that, because it inspired me to explore an opportunity that I didn't have in me from my lineage. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Well, that's kind of interesting. I like that. It's very honest. Because how many people like wouldn't say that, but it was true, right? That's
sure.
That's fascinating.
Sure.
Any shows in particular?
Oh,
Y50.
Well, more along the lines of the martial arts stuff, right? At some point, I recall having to decide what I was going to do with this opportunity, and I wanted to help. And pair that with that thought, getting close to the action and helping live time while it's happening. It had to be policing.
Right.
It had to be policing.
And yeah, you and I kind of chatted about this a little bit. Like we have this idea of law enforcement, like as you're going in, right? It's going to be X, Y, Z. And you came in a little different. Like you had all this other training, right?
I did.
Whereas the academies usually get people, or what, 18, 19, 20 or something.
Right. Roughly speaking, early 20s. Yeah, I like to say that. I came in my 30s. And I came in with knowledge, skills, and abilities and experience from another realm, a whole different experience pattern. And I'd like to say I had a little bit of a shell built. You know what I mean? My thinking, my brain was already wired in certain ways.
Yeah.
You know, one of the big experiences for me was my time at Northeastern University when I got to work as security in the nightclub scene in Boston. Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it was. It was a 10-year thing. I did so many different positions. I played so many different roles, but the primary was always making sure people were safe. The interests of the owners were cared for. Rules and regulations were followed. But it's where I fell in love with people having access to safe spaces where they can let their authentic selves out and have a good time.
Yeah. And what kind of venues were you at?
I was on Lansdowne Street.
It's right outside Fenway, right?
Yeah. Right outside Fenway. Axis, Avalon, Karma Club. And I worked for quite some time in the only legal after hours in Boston rise.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's a chance I walked by you once or twice.
Yeah, I bet.
So law enforcement, like you assume serve and protect, right? I'm going to help people. I'm going to make sure people are safe, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And let's talk about like the difference between maybe how you came in and then how somebody might come in at age 20 and kind of get indoctrinated and see it a little differently maybe than you're seeing it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let me start off with my mindset. My mindset around, so look, I come into policing in my 30s, right when we have the opioid epidemic, right? Full bore happening, people dying everywhere. And I already have in me a belief system that says people who have relationships with intoxicating substances are not bad people. I already know this, right?
All right, from the nightclub scene at the very least.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the nightclub scene at the very least, never mind all the other principles that go into that as well, right? This country successfully and unfortunately criminalized self-directed behavior, right? And I find it really hard to believe that happened in the land of the free, right? We have to kind of explore what made that happen and why, right? A crime for me, and in my belief system built around the founding documents of this country, is what happens when you harm a person or a person's property, right? When you harm somebody else or you do something to their property. It's really easy to wrap your mind around. How and when did doing something to yourself become a crime? You know? Mm-hmm. So I had all these thoughts in my mind already and in my soul when I came into policing, right when there was a drug epidemic happening. And it was so severe, and it's still going on, that people were open to listen to different ideas around how to help based on that, you know? Yeah, which, I can go into this path if it's appropriate.
Yeah, let's explore it just a little bit. So, some people are actually just okay towing the company line, if we want to put it that way.
Sure.
And saying, oh yeah, these are just the rules. Rules is rules. Versus, if you want to take like a natural law approach to these things, or whatever the founding fathers would say. My quick tangent. Quote from Thomas Jefferson I got from this fellow at the Cato Institute a couple of weeks ago, said something along the lines of, the right to self-medicate is as sacred as the right to free speech. Jefferson, blows my mind.
That's magnificent. Thank you thank you for. I'm like, give me a minute. Give me a minute with that. That's amazing. That's right. That's right.
Blew my mind that I didn't have access to that quote until 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And how true.
How true. And if we're not careful, right, systems start shaving away power, right? The system wants the power. And we, in this country, the founding fathers made a concerted effort and a decision to enshrine and protect power in the individual. I mean, it's a revolutionary idea in
just giving it away at an accelerating pace everywhere, and it's really concerning to me. And I'm a real big software guy, and I see it in software too. There's all these new bills that are ostensibly to, as they always are, protect children, but it's really like, oh, let's give attorney generals more power to surveil citizens. And it's like, what on earth are we thinking?
Yeah,
that this is going to go in a good direction. Like, free speech is here for a reason. We should be able to use the internet quite liberally, and we can't if it keeps going in this direction. And so anyway, let's go back to law enforcement. And what is it about the structure of this thing from your perspective? We don't have to go too far with it. Like that, it kind of just can create these professionals who don't necessarily have those beliefs and are just kind of like doing the job. Or is it careerism, or like what's going on?
Well, I have a little bit of perspective on that, and I'm not going to claim to know every detail around it, but coming at it from an empathetic viewpoint, you come into a job and you learn how to do that job and you master a certain skill set, right? And a knowledge base. And you go out there and you do your job, right? And then you build your life around that job.
Sure.
Right? Now, this includes getting your bills met, right? You buy a house, you buy a car or two, you have some children, and you know what you're doing. Everything makes sense. Everything feels secure, right? Changing that, injecting uncertainty into that, I get it. I get it. But having that be the case for absolutely everybody, right? It shouldn't be like that. I think we as a country are more powerful by being diverse. And that includes diverse ways of thinking. And that includes diverse ways of coming at challenges. And the more diverse our police departments are, I believe this with all my heart, the stronger we are for it, the stronger policing is for it. And I'm talking all types of diversity. That's something that we've had to make a concerted effort to move towards in this country, right? And in Massachusetts, thank God we did. I mean, every state's a little different, but Massachusetts really made an effort to diversify their police force, and we're better for it, you know? But now, if we can diversify not only ways of thinking in police, but have a diversity of education and background in policing, right? Then we'll see some magic happen. Then we'll see some creativity in how we respond to these very human problems that we all experience.
Like growing up, my perspective on Boston police was all Irish, all Catholic, and it's like a really homogeneous group of folks who 50, 60 years ago, they were really disadvantaged, right? They were not in a great situation in Boston, and now they've got power and it's their group, right? And, you know, yeah, I think you're spot on. Like diversity kind of prevents a lot of those problems.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the problems that I think it prevents is, you know, when you realize that the tool you're using on a challenge isn't working, it can help you notice that fact and get a different tool, right? So I think of broadness of perspective, right?
Yeah,
it's almost like an antidote for that, ideally. Now, you know, the training matters, right? Education pathways matter. You know, I came into policing with an undergraduate degree in philosophy and religion. You know, I had that stuff in my heart. But it came from somewhere. Smarter people than myself put it in me, right? So I am a real big proponent of opening up professional development pathways that are non-traditional for police officers, right? Why don't we have some of them going down social work while they're police officers? Why don't we have some of them studying history?
Whoa.
Or you know what I mean?
Both of those.
Mental health counseling, you know, religious traditions, philosophy.
Boston, PhD in history of Boston.
Right.
Imagine that.
Right. Imagine knowing the complicated past that led to the present, right? And the sensitivity that we allow. Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah, I would love that. And yeah, like you can get by with the bare minimum in a lot of these careers, not just law enforcement. It's like you jump in, you can kind of phone it in, play the game, retire. And, you know, you did your whole life. You did, you know, ostensibly a good job. Or, you know, what is that richer life with more opportunity, more connection?
Right. I love that you said that, more connection.
It's kind of in a way what history could do, right? Same thing with like training and social work. Like you can actually understand like the texture of the landscape that you're operating in.
There it is.
You go like, what? Oh, like, why am I policing like that? When? That's not really where the problem is. The problem could be, you know, a couple 100 miles away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cultural competency, you know.
We're building that out. We're in the middle, partnered with some veterans. We're doing a cultural competency for veterans in like a psychedelic therapy context. And then also we'll have some queer stuff. And I think we're going to work on a lot more niche topics around particular groups. Because I think the more training's available for more niche organizations, like the better, oh, you just picked up somebody that you don't know as a client that you don't know how to work with. And like, oh, maybe I can do 3 hours at least of training.
That's right.
To help support that person better, maybe.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that.
It's interesting from a law enforcement perspective if we twist that a little bit.
Yeah. Right. And that can expose you to things that make you uncomfortable. And kind of jumping back to that original point, why somebody would just end up on a straight and narrow and keep walking that way is because who likes to feel uncomfortable, right? But that's when we grow, right? Every one of the domains of wellness, right? All 8 from the feds, to have any expansion happen in any one of them, you need to put yourself at the point of carefully thought out discomfort, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, whatever it is, or you don't grow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. I really wonder. Yeah, before we go too far off the rails, there's one thing I remember you and I chatted about, like, what if there was some idea of philosophy of law enforcement, and that was something that we actually start bringing the conversation forward, like, why are we here? Why do we do anything?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, that's what we're exploring right now. Yeah. And then that's a rabbit hole, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah, like at what point are your laws that you're enforcing not just? That kind of a question alone,
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big deal. And it could be informed by, I don't really know how metaphysics fits in, but could probably figure that out eventually. But, should that person really go to jail for 2 decades for a gram of cannabis? Like, I think not. It's not really happening here in Massachusetts all that often, but I'm sure there's cases.
Oh yeah, let me plug something in about that, because it gets me fired up to think about this. I mean, this type of a conversation about cannabis just a little while ago would have been looked at like, what the hell are those guys saying? I can't believe they're even saying or thinking that. And then look at where we're at now: legalized medicinal and recreational access to cannabis. Thank goodness we're in Massachusetts, because just a year ago or a year or 2 ago, I forget exactly, I think there was 300,000 arrests for marijuana in this country. See what that number just did, right? I mean, really? I mean, we got to talk about this. Like, what is going on right now? Half the country's gone green. It's either recreational and medicinal in approximately half the country. So that other half that hasn't done it yet, they're still arresting people. More than likely, young people, right? Who are minorities.
Yeah, sets them up for a really, really difficult, hard life. And the consequences from that are just not fair, not okay.
Catastrophic. Yeah, catastrophic. And there's, we don't, how real is redemption built into the system? When you make an error.
As if it's rehabilitation.
Right? Yeah. You make an error and you carry that error with you forever. How does that make sense?
And for people that want more on that, High Price by Carl Hart, you can get a really good view in some of his, I think it was some of his nephews. They're writing big shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's ugly. It's ugly. And how can professionals feel good about it, right? And it should be investigated and it should be thought about and discussed. Like, I lean towards heretical conversations. Like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, but here's the reality. And, we need to go a little further here and have those hard talks.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And we're seeing it with everything too. Like you do some work with law enforcement, they changed their name. Law Enforcement Action Partnership. Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Formerly Law Enforcement Against Prohibition.
That's right.
Yeah. And can you tell me a little bit about this, like this kind of anti-prohibition stance and like why you lean that way?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's just start off with, I don't think it's a crime. A self-directed behavior isn't a crime. It never should have been. And that includes ingestion of whatever the heck you want to ingest. It really does ultimately come down to that. And I had that in my heart and mind, like I shared when I came into policing during the opioid epidemic, which is still going on. And I thought to myself, we have to do something different here. you know? And, I think this goes right along with the mission of a law enforcement action partnership. And if this is an okay time, I'll go into it, I just realized that the police departments were basically storehouses of information on human suffering. I mean, that was my moment, right? And you can see how my interests and background and even reading, even in the language I'm using, right? Human suffering, right? I say that to some people and they're like, what are you talking about? Right? So yeah, the servers, the computer systems and servers at the police departments are repositories of information on human struggle, human challenge, human suffering. And the mission statement of the police dictates that we help with that, right? So in reviewing the police logs and police incidents coming into the police department to prepare for my patrol shift, I just saw that there was actionable information there that we were doing nothing with. And when I tell you nothing, I really mean nothing. If a situation didn't escalate to the level of a crime that could play out in court, we would do nothing with it. So that left...
Sounds inclusive of violence.
Yeah, because there's rules around violence. There has to be evidence. There has to be probable cause to act on it. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of stuff happens out of sight, out of mind, right? But that could create a trail of data for us to use. This is what I was seeing. Right?
Over time.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
And we could use that data to close the service loop. So instead of linear action, hotspot policing, we know where a situation is, send our assets in that direction, put out the fire and leave. That leaves the service loop open. You went there for a reason. What's that reason? Go back and see if you can lend a helping hand, right? So I tell people, we're seeing calls for service in the computers about mental health, about domestic violence, about well-being checks, anxiety, depression, PTSD, not using medication. I mean, those are all police calls for service that have an open service loop. I said, let me go back and talk to people. And I think in that act, there is a major opportunity for repair, heart-to-heart connection. And, it gets really hard to allow yourself to want to hurt somebody that you've grown a connection with. It gets really hard. And what I mean by that is this. Sometimes I go back to a house 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. On the 8th time, they say, yeah, you're right, I need help. But each one of those returns to that address creates more of a relationship. Am I becoming safer by doing that? I'd say I am. Are our police becoming safer by doing that? I'd say they are. What's that worth? Yeah.
Value is a hard conversation, but yeah, absolutely. More than the dollars. For sure.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah. How do we think about that? Yeah. So, in my world, I exist in a, interesting space, and the trust between people in my world and law enforcement's low, because, I'm around a lot of people who have been smoking cannabis for a long time, psychedelics for a long time. And it's like, okay, if I go make a relationship with that person, as opposed to stay as far away as possible, I could go away.
That's right.
Yeah, I could lose everything, right? So how do we make this? So this is where the drug war has created this schism, right? And
that's right.
How do we repair, And it's, the drug war has to end, in my opinion, before we can, build a real bridge. And it's sad. But perhaps individual municipalities, like we're seeing, Salem, New Hampshire, Massachusetts just went decrim for psychedelics, which is a start. It's not big enough, but a bunch of municipalities in the west of Massachusetts started recently. So law enforcement can, focus on big, meaningful things. There's a Krakauer book called Missoula that I read not that long ago. Missoula apparently is one of the rape capitals of the world, which are America at least, which is horrifying.
That's horrible.
And they did a really good profile there about how little attention is given to those reports, including stuff that's really well documented. Horrifying. And this is just one small city in America. And like until there's actual, focus on really scary, gnarly crimes, even if you can't go all the way to court, and win, right? Like we should still be testing all those things. And if we're allocating resources to cannabis offenders instead of rape kits, like what are
we
we
doing?
saying to people?
That's right. Yeah. Where are our values at? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's Montana at least, but we can do better here, I hope.
That's right. No, that's a really good point. And we're seeing this decriminalization happen city by city. There's a lot of people pushing for it, and I think that the mass is growing and growing, and that's what happened with marijuana, right? Cannabis, and how many cities in Massachusetts have decrim now? Cambridge, Somerville, Northampton, East Hampton. Salem must have just happened.
Like 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
I didn't even have that on my radar.
I was just there yesterday. I forgot about it.
Okay.
Well, I was there.
Okay.
I should have mentioned. I should have done some video on it.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Good for them. Yeah. Like, exactly. Just, decriminalization is saying to law enforcement, focus on violence. Right? Isn't that already what we're supposed to be doing?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, danger. Like, I certainly love going fast in my car, but I should get pulled over once in a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And, how do we just keep each other safe and happy and going in the right direction?
That's right.
One of my friends, I think he was relatively young, 20 years old, maybe 19 in Amsterdam. He grew up over there. He ended up eating ecstasy at a club. It's like rolling all over the streets, like way too high. Some police officers picked him up, kept him safe, brought him home to his parents' house, and said, "Have a nice night. See you later."
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, and I see this sometimes too. Like, I think there's some government-funded drug testing and like festival harm reduction services in Switzerland. Very nice, like bus built out with all the testing gear you could want. And like it's government trying to keep people safe as opposed to government trying to spend to keep people incarcerated.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I mean, just even those two examples, we see that kind of stuff happening all the time. I mean, our law enforcement take people home to their parents all the time. That should be the norm. It shouldn't just be, we're coming out of the era where that was only happening for alcohol, right? Right. So I don't understand this divvy up and treat the substances differently. But if you dig a little bit, you kind of figure out why that happened in the first place. Keeping people alive has to be primary. If you don't have a person that's alive, you don't have the possibility of recovery, right? So we're tasked with watching out for one another, making sure people are alive, and whatever relationship they have with intoxicating substances, that's their personal story. And they're going to get to their healing journey and their recovery from any out of balance relationship in due time, their time.
Are you seeing maybe in the last year or two some sort of attitude changes with some of your colleagues? Probably slower than we want, but
yeah. It's this stuff is happening. But it is very slow. Police culture is it's tight, it's resistant, it changes slowly, and that all makes sense. I mean, it's a particular industry, but it's my hope that these types of conversations and what's going on out there coming in can speed that up a little bit.
Have you seen, so when you start sharing data about like the MAPS clinical trials, do you see any kind of acceleration in convincing people, or your experience or what you've observed with other professionals in the space, like getting better?
Yeah. So the heavy research-based Western scientific data matters. I've noticed that. It really matters. You could say or lead with this all day long. People have been using this stuff for centuries, right? There's shamanistic traditions, right? First Nations, Native traditions, in someone rooted in this Western culture, they want to see the science, right? And I've seen the science having that type of impact on police audiences. I'll give you a caveat about which audience is most open to it, at least seemingly most open to it. There are police officers that are getting trained as police peer professionals to find and help debrief and defuse situations that officers were involved in, like critical incidents. So there seemed to be a receptive audience for helping heal first responders. And if the data's there, they get interested because our people are hurting.
Yeah.
They're really hurting. 40 years of a career in law enforcement, 200 plus critical incidents getting absorbed into a nervous system. High likelihood that you end up leaving with a problem. High likelihood that you die 5 to 10 years after retirement.
I heard a similar figure. People that'll retire from like CIA, NSA, very short lifespan post-retirement. Really, really sad. Spend your whole life dedicated to this thing, and all of a sudden. So if we have data, we do need to do better.
That's right. That's right. And then if you have the data, look at it, really look at it, and don't pick and choose what data you put on the table, right? There's a lot of compelling evidence that this is safe and it works. These modalities are helpful. People are dying. Civilians are dying. Law enforcement are dying. We're at a critical moment in time. I think that's, I mean, through tension comes the birth of, the third, right? I think it's creating opportunity through not only tension, but tragedy. That's what's going on.
Yeah, force for transmutation. Yeah, I haven't heard birth of the third yet. That was a better way of putting Hegel. More understandable. So, yeah, that tension is required. Did you ever get the opportunity to read Thomas Kuhn's famous work? What the hell is it called? Structure of Scientific Revolutions.
I have not.
So this is a big Groff book. He always recommends it. And this is, anybody in this kind of new paradigm kind of goes there. He developed this whole framework. People have critiqued it a little bit, but he kept updating it. It's pretty much like, what do things look like right before this gigantic shift in perspective? And it looks a lot like what we've got right now. And we're, I think, approaching that tail end, at least for the inclusion of psychedelics in medicine and the shifts that'll be required in science and medicine to really handle it. It's a really helpful framework. And I think we can also see that inside more niche organizations, like, for example, like a particular police department or district or something. Like, there's probably resistance. And all of a sudden, oh, you were right. I guess we should go to clock or whatever it is. Like,
right.
Yeah.
You can feel it. You can feel it. It at least to me, it feels like we're at a point like that, and it's gonna be a paradigm shift. I mean, we're the way I perceive where we're entering is we're for the first time going to go into non-Band-Aid medication for the human mind and soul, right? We haven't had medications that actually help create situations which allow a person to heal.
Right. We have that for broken bones.
Right.
Maybe some dentistry.
Right.
But yeah, not the insides.
Right. Not for psyche, soul,
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah. And it's important for people to understand it. And I've read a couple of books. This one on violence, one really kind of helped me understand how much downtime is required after a critical incident, for instance. Like, I think you were telling me, just like throw some water in your face and get back out there is kind of like the culture today.
That's right.
But we've had the data for a while that you need a break.
That's right.
Otherwise, stuff gets stuck.
Yeah.
You can get really sick.
We are exiting that time in this area. I want to give Massachusetts props again for that. They have boldly moved in the direction of critical incident stress management teams.
Is that at the like municipality level usually, or?
Yeah, there's groups joining up to provide coverage.
Great.
Like the one I'm involved in is a group-based one that covers multiple municipalities. Yeah. And it's just people starting to use the science to understand that you can't just splash some water on your face and go back. You know, it actually requires some downtime. It actually requires eating right, going for a walk, working out, because your blood, biochemically changes, right? Your system gets full of cortisol and adrenaline and 1,400 other chemicals. And those are what's going to make your blood vessels harder, right? And your blood thicker, and your heart work harder, right? And this is an everyday. So this is the everyday up and down cycle for first responders, right? So 1 day of that is one thing. 1 month, 1 year. I've said something like this before, but 40 years. Right?
Yeah. At a certain point, those folks are too old to be doing that and getting exposed to that, but also just accumulates.
That's right.
In a really ugly way, I'm sure.
That's right. It makes me wild when this is it. It's not a normal job.
No,
it's not a normal job, and people need help.
My closest exposure was like my father's a paramedic, and getting some stories. He only did it for like a year or two, but it was just so raw. And the stories I would hear, holy hell. And like police have to do that for years and years and years and years.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
With the sharp end of the stick pointing at him too. It's like, it's no joke. Yeah. So the attitude that must engender is pretty crazy. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what's like a day in the life of your police work now? Like what are you up to? Is it, high speed chases?
Yeah, right.
What do you do?
The glorious Hollywood stuff. Yeah, I love that you said that. It's really funny. Well, it's, my office is at the public health department. My setup has the computer systems that gives me access to the police department servers. And every day I review the dispatch logs and the police incidents for matters that warrant follow-up. So I'm basically searching for work for myself. And I have an officer assigned to me as well. What I mean by that is when I flag a matter, that means that it requires follow-up. So circle back, try to find the person where they're at, to have a conversation with them about their problems. And once I get verbal consent, right? Because I'm not going to do anything without verbal consent. If somebody tells me go away, I don't need any help, that's honored, right? But if they say, yes, I do need help, you're right. Thank you for coming to my house. I did have an overdose that I survived, luckily, or my grandkid did, or my son or daughter did. I immediately connect the person to a team of people in the public health department comprised of a recovery coach, a Massachusetts certified recovery coach, a mental health professional who's a social worker, a resource navigator supervisor. We have a PARI volunteer on our team right now helping out, and our director's a nurse. And the goal is to prevent death and prevent arrest. So I'm cultivating matters for public health instead of creating cases for court. That's CL.E.A.R. Community and Law Enforcement Assisted Recovery.
What is the group PARI? What is PARI?
Police Assisted Addiction Recovery Initiative.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Concept.
Right? They started in Gloucester. In Gloucester, the police chief at the time said, if you're struggling with addiction and you need help, come into the police department and we're going to help you. It was radical at the time. And this not-for-profit organization is basically the umbrella organization that developed supporting other locations in developing their own initiatives. Yeah.
Are you seeing this get taken up anywhere else?
Yeah. Yeah. It's popping up everywhere. Luckily, both here and in Canada. across the country. And I wanted to say something else as well. Oh, a little kudos to our group. Winthrop, our group in Winthrop is actually a mentor site for the feds. And they pair us up with mentees who want to learn how to implement this strategy. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
That's fascinating.
Very, very grateful.
Yeah, I wonder how they would implement that at the federal level. They need the education at the very least. Yeah, but that's great because that'll have impact all over for sure. That's cool, and it helps validate the idea a little bit in the eyes of, I think, more city police. That's fascinating.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, how radical.
Yeah, right. I know. I associate complicated with radical, and it's just not. It's radically simple.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's radically.
It's like, oh, look, that thing we were doing, apparently we haven't had an effect in a meaningful way that we wanted. So let's actually look at that.
Try something different.
Yeah.
That what you just said goes along with my thinking about making sure naloxone is readily available to everybody. Making sure fentanyl test strips are available to everybody and anybody who needs them. How about that? Have you heard of the number Never Use Alone?
Yeah. Well, there's a number with it.
Yeah, there's a phone number. I
didn't know that.
Oh yeah. And so that's a principle, right? Never use alone, right? How about it's a group. They created a phone number. You call it, and a person stays on the phone with you to make sure you're okay until you feel the effects of whatever you got to feel, and then they hang the phone up.
Wild. Yeah.
How about getting that information over to people so they don't die? Right.
So there's a number of organizations doing that kind of stuff. I always find it amazing. One thing that kind of, I'm by nature paranoid for some reason. But people listen to the show understand that a little bit. But it's perhaps sometimes justified. One of my buddies goes, if it's realistic, it's not paranoia. I'm like, oh, okay. Right. So there's some organizations where you can actually call in, and I don't want to name the organization right now, but like you can call in and get support from a bad trip from volunteers and whatnot. But there's software apparatus collecting data. Who knows if the calls are being recorded or not? Maybe they're not. But it's being in software for so long, I know that necessarily how somebody built an application isn't how it's working in the real world.
Oh, so interesting.
So like data diversion through various surveillance apparatus to like help map the scene and perhaps arrest key stakeholders, and the kind of stories that could spill on a bad trip hotline could be really ugly for people's freedom. And I always get a little concerned, but if it's backed by an organization that says this is what we're doing, and we're a government organization, you can kind of hold them accountable, right? So like at what point could that data get used against you, towards incarceration or getting your family removed or something like that, right? So just a thought that comes up for me. Any thoughts there?
Oh man, my thought is very real concerns that would be worth noting. I mean, at a minimum, just having it on the table. Willy-nilly getting involved with stuff without this level of thought seems frightening. Yeah.
I'd love to be less paranoid.
But when but like you said, you have a background and you're in technology, and right, so what can happen, and if you're ignorant to it, you can't acknowledge for it. So to make a system better, you got to be aware of what could happen and what is happening, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think you're saying. So, yeah,
it's tough. Like even Signal isn't perfect, right? It's great, certainly not perfect. But how do we? Yeah, I don't know. This is why it's so holistic with ending the drug war, right? Because if the drug war wasn't here, then we wouldn't have to have that conversation and 10 others, right? Like people are still trying to make money off of putting people away, and I've heard the structure of like DEA compensation for a big bust goes on. It's like a really interesting structure to that.
Yeah.
worth checking out. And, if the bust is big and you could do a lot of civil asset forfeiture, like you can walk away with a big buck. And it's like not necessarily the case that your crime was bad or is all that bad, but if they can make a case and do that, they could get a big payout. And it's kind of like in the structure of a lot of these organizations that we've got to really figure a lot of that out.
Yeah, like looking at it and trying to figure out what's inadvertently or intentionally getting funded. Yeah, and once that happens, it's hard to pull out of, right? People build their lives on the cat and mouse situations that are built into the system. Yeah,
it's wild. So shifting gears to something more positive.
Sure.
So the idea occurred to me a little while ago. What organizations really look out for law enforcement interests? And the idea of a union came up for me. And I'm wondering if it would be a reasonable approach to say, hey, union rep, I have this training, I have this experience. Here's the data. What can we do together to make law enforcement professionals' lives better? And, thinking ketamine, MDMA, et cetera.
That's right.
And then we said the I word, boga or something. Like what, what are your thoughts there? Like, is the union, like, does it have a vested interest to help police?
Well, the union should, right? So I think at some point this is going to get to them, and concern for their member body is going to lead to hopefully everyone gathering around a table and discussing it for real, for sure. I don't know what they have to wait for, specifically. There is a lot of data out there. Maybe this conversation will lead to somebody asking. Yeah. I'd make myself available to talk to anybody from the police unions who want to have a discussion. They should be looking at this, and it's going to save lives, and it's going to be very helpful, and it's coming. It's coming. Yeah.
So what kind of stuff? Well, let's maybe pick one example, a super genericized example of somebody who, you come in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, whatever, 19, 20 years old, get through the academy, you get a gig. You're like, oh, cool, here I am. That's what I wanted to do. Things go sideways eventually, like too much stress or whatever it is. Like what's like a story of, I hate to say it, I guess just a sad story that, could have had a better outcome given MDMA therapy and appropriate leave?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of that. I think we lose a ton of really good people because of the critical incidents that they walk into. They leave the police academy, they get involved with the police work, and they take a domestic violence call, or they go to a car wreck where a child's been crushed to death, or they go to a call where a child is choking, and they're the first on scene, and the parents hand the child to the officer. How many of those will cause somebody to go sideways? Right?
Like two.
Yeah, right?
Two. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, the list can go on and on and on, and I think that it will shorten people's careers. We'll lose good officers because of it, or it could harden officers, right? And then slowly manifest in challenges that impact them personally, professionally. Yeah, I could keep coming up with examples of critical incidents that they would run into.
So it leads to probably increased substance use, decrease in probably family life satisfaction and integrity of the family. What else? Like sleep issues. Is there a big increase in suicidality?
Oh, well, yeah, the number around that is horrible. I mean, we're twice, more than twice likely than a civilian to die by suicide. Yeah. I mean, that speaks to what you just brought up. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I guess it shows critical. I like this term. This is the first time I've ever used it. Critical incident. But yeah, exposure to those is, it's not great.
No.
Kind of, I'm flipping it. It's like kind of that, the A score, that adverse childhood experiences, but it's like, oh, adult.
Right. Right.
adverse adult experience.
Exactly. And that's what you sign up. That's what you sign up for when you accept this type of work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To carry that burden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huh. Is your sense that psychology, psychiatry, et cetera, is getting to the point where we can start to help people more?
Yeah. With what's coming down the pike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thankfully, in my thinking about it, ketamine is available.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Have you seen some good results with law enforcement with ketamine?
Well, I've been trained in it, and I was able to access it. So I've experienced it. Very low dose, intramuscular, magical, and the after effect for a couple weeks, the reprieve, the relaxed feeling. It was beautiful. And why shouldn't our officers who are getting dark be able to access that? Right? Before they're pegged with depression.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Why shouldn't they be able to access that before they put the barrel of the gun in their mouth? Right? By themselves in their police cruiser.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you need a diagnostic label to access self-care? It makes absolutely no sense to me. You know, just going on a caveat with that. Same thing with psilocybin, right? Like we're looking at psilocybin for depression and all these other things, but if our officers are going to have to wait till they have a diagnostic label of depression to access a medicine, they're not going to go get it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really important to me to build in proper self-care, access to self-care as needed for law enforcement, fire, emergency medical, emergency hospital workers.
Yeah, people are leaving hospital work.
That's right.
Aggressively too. It's incredible. At a time we need more folks in the hospital.
Exactly. And that kind of goes back to me saying, how many good people do we lose? Right. And I'm not saying to death. I'm saying to hell with this. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, to all of it, right? It's tough. It's a really bad scene.
Yeah.
And, we need everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need everybody out of prison to help work on all of this stuff, make their families whole again, work on planet repair, everything. It's a really an all hands on deck moment.
That's right.
And we can't just keep throwing people in cages and, keeping people from really helpful care.
That's right. That's right.
With the right structure, ketamine-assisted psychotherapy could be quite affordable with the right structures in place. And we just have to figure out how to get there. So, there's so much interesting stuff we could go into. Like, as far as are police getting some ketamine treatment?
I mean, they could access it. They could access it if they need it. There's ketamine clinics in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's on the radar. I'm noticing people don't even realize that it's a really effective and available treatment. It's almost like, depression, see your doctor, get an SSRI. It's like a completely entrenched pathway.
It's a smooth pipeline.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
The ketamine one's a little bumpier, a little obscure. Unfortunately, you get people who psych meds failed a few times and then maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. And there is pretty good success. Where did you get training with ketamine?
My experiential was at Denova Clinic in Lubbock, Texas.
Great. Yeah.
Do you know that clinic?
I know Lubbock. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. It was amazing. A beautiful place. Well curated, well cared for. The founder is amazing. His staff is unbelievable. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and there are ways to make it work well. It's and be somewhat accessible in terms of cost. Sure. It's
sure. Yeah, talking about accessibility and stuff, and even in the self-care pathway for law enforcement, like I wonder what it's going to be like in Oregon for law enforcement to access an experience at one of these healing centers for self-care that's going to be available to the civilians.
So what we talked about on our first call there was this idea of you're breaking federal law. In Oregon, it's a little complicated too because it's non-clinical, allegedly, just based on the way the voters put it through.
That's
it's more like supported adult use, right? So it's fascinating. I'm okay with that weirdness because it kind of lowers the cost by not making it clinical.
Yep.
And then really it's the firearm issue. So when you purchase a firearm, I don't know what the rules are when you're in law enforcement. You have to sign an affidavit that says, I do not use any illegal drugs, under the penalty of perjury. I don't use illegal drugs. And I don't remember that in the Second Amendment of the Constitution, but they put it there. And then even with cannabis, like it's you're at risk if you own a firearm, use a firearm, and you're a cannabis user. And I think the DEA recently, or this DEA or ATF came back and said recently, like, we don't want to take that limitation away on cannabis because we still need to have some sort of leverage over cocaine and methamphetamine enthusiasts. And how do we do our job otherwise? I'm like, it's a really, really kind of weird way of thinking about it. So that's for civilians, right? I don't know how that relates to law enforcement. Right?
That's right.
Is there a federal process for kind of like firearm training that police need to go through? It's not just like municipal and state.
No, it's state. It's state level. Yeah. I didn't have any federal training.
Yeah.
But that's so interesting.
It's a weird one.
Well, but you can access firearms and alcohol.
Oh, all day. Well, New Jersey somehow beat everybody else to the punch where there was an allowance. This was news maybe 6-8 months ago, an allowance for law enforcement to consume cannabis in New Jersey.
Gotcha.
Amazing. So
that is totally amazing.
We just need like I don't think the feds are going to come down on Massachusetts or New Jersey if, say, Massachusetts did something similar.
That's right.
Hey, you can get the care. You're an adult. You can get the care you need.
Right. Yeah. We say when you consume alcohol, you shouldn't drive. Right. When you consume a substance, you should probably lock up your firearm.
I was at a bar once with 6 FBI special agents in Park City, Utah, hard drinking. And by the end of the night, these guys were nearly in fistfights. I was shocked, and they were all carrying.
Yeah.
And I'm there going,
yeah.
I don't know about being around this many feds at once. That's the most feds I've been around ever. But I'm like, oh man, this could be really weird. Yeah, with the wrong group, like that could get really strange and problematic. Yeah. So yeah, it would be good if folks did put their stuff away.
That's right.
And I think that's fine. Like, I think what could happen is far more awkward regulation as opposed to self-regulation.
That's right.
Yeah. Like, we have to create a culture of it. Like skiing, people are still not wearing helmets, but way more are now than were in the 90s.
That's right. And I mean, right there, we're talking harm reduction, right? And I like the way you said that. In weird regulations could pop up as we get concerned with, like, how do we come out of black and white regulation, right? That's all bad. Well, now we're realizing it's not. How is that going to play into nuance into the society? And then you go, but I got to worry about losing power and control, right? I think we can trust in the fact that the adult American individual, citizen, resident, whoever they are, can learn how to act according to nuanced regulation. I believe that.
Yeah. I always lean towards the simplest regulation.
Okay.
It's easier to remember 1 or 2 rules than 30, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, even with the helmet, let's use the helmet as an example. Yeah. I'd say that's nuanced regulation, right? So we're not saying don't.
If we're going that way, hell yeah.
Or we say you can drink, but you can, you should probably stay within this limit. We say
there's like 1 or 2 rules. Great.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm tracking.
Yeah. And I'm there with you too. Like, that's That's simple enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, if you only ate a quarter hit acid, you don't have to lock it up. But over a quarter hit, you better lock it up. You know, that's a weird one.
Yeah, right.
Hunter Thompson would have some issues, but we're fine. Yeah. So the next one is like career and career protection by not seeking healthcare, by not seeking like a therapist, for instance. And it's allegedly bad for your career. We've seen it in the movies a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, it is. That's such an interesting point. Because the concern about losing your badge and gun is absolutely real. And my example for that will be the fact that Massachusetts passed legislation affording trained police peers legal confidentiality. Because that's how tight-lipped law enforcement professionals are about their struggles. They don't want anyone to know they're struggling. They don't want anyone to know. They can't let anyone know that they're going dark. They can't. So Massachusetts passed into law, Governor Baker, confidentiality for peer support professionals so that at least the officers can turn to one another and open up. And that information cannot be gathered and used against them. That information does not have to flow back to the upper administrators at the police departments. You know, writing into law ways of making and helping people open up to one another. I mean, it's needed. It's part of the culture.
Yeah, like the next level would be how do we bake in some sort of protection for these professionals to be able to seek legitimate clinical health care?
That's right.
Yeah, and you know what's this idea of mandatory reporter? You're a risk of harm to yourself or others. Like that's a slippery as hell slope.
Yeah,
in law enforcement, right? It's tough.
Yeah,
so figuring out how to protect folks and still, you know, maybe it's okay you lose your gun for a week or two. You don't lose your badge, you know?
Right. So yeah, exactly. Like, I've been involved in some situations where the firearms were put away. They were put away and people went and got help. That's based on the belief that we can heal.
Yeah.
As long as we speak up about it, you know? Should that lead to termination immediately without opportunity to heal? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah. It's really not fair. Like, that's the thing. Like, if any kind of civilian population, you can kind of see how it's a clear line to work your career up to a certain point. And it's okay if you seek therapy. But in kind of in these government roles, I think one of the most famous cases was that I saw on TV. It's Homeland, and this woman like could not get those services in an above board way. And in Colorado Springs is right down the road from me, huge military area.
Yeah,
and a lot of people don't seek that kind of care on base, and they actually go and figure out a way to get treatment and pay cash.
Gotcha.
And they probably don't even use their real name, right? Like a fake persona, just so they can get help. And what a ridiculous scenario we've created for these people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And isn't mental health parity about trying to help with that, right? Where you're supposed to treat physical health in line with the way mental health in line with the way you're supposed to treat physical health. But mental health is so stigmatized, you know, so stigmatized. And I think we've got a lot of work to do, and we're coming into it's a transition point, right? Where there's a lot of effort being put to destigmatize and help people get the assistance they need without getting fired. You know, it's just, no one's getting fired for a broken leg or diabetes, right? Or heart disease or high cholesterol, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's rough. So we've got to figure that out. I think that's a really big one. And it makes me wonder, like, okay, if you got to the point where you needed MDMA therapy, what kind of police work should you be doing through that process? Like, should you be doing critical incidents in the midst of getting your, hardcore transformative care?
No. If I think that could be built in, right? So we have something called light duty, right? People also build up personal time. They have vacation time. They have sick time, right? Sick time banks, right? If you're going to be working with heart and mind and soul openers, I think you need to come up with a strategic plan for reentry into your normal. And if your normal is policing work, it would be wise to plan that out, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Or have some sort of at least pathway to it. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Like that's perfect. And then, yeah, well, if they can't use personal days or sick days, like, they need to get better.
That's right.
Like, how is that different from any other on the job injury in a way?
That's exactly right. And it should be the same and treated the same way. But I think the culture is going to have to be trained with this concept of reentry. And it's like someone not familiar with this world will hear that and be like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? It's like you're going to go do some very deep work. It's going to take you out of your normal. It's probably a good idea for you to have a container to help make sense of what you experienced there. And then you probably don't want to go to work the next day or the 1 hour afterwards or 6 hours afterwards. So all this information needs to be assimilated into the culture and containers need to be built. And I think we're in that process right now. You know?
That makes sense. Like really specific kind of cultural or career containers, right? Like, yeah. Should a cardiac or brain surgeon go into work the day after? No.
That's right.
It should probably take a few days.
That's right. And I think they do that, right? They've got to police themselves, right? And know what's going on and where they're at. But if somebody needs, extended change in their normal, there are situations that require light duty, right? And you kind of see that play out with physical ailments, right? If somebody has knee surgery or some kind of a lower back problem, right? I think we need to normalize that for mind and soul work as well.
Great. And there's extensions here to like all sorts of careers, right? Next is pilots.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Like, should they be afforded the same rights as everybody else? Totally.
That's right.
How do we get there?
How do you get there? Right? And how's that going to look? Look, I believe we're going to be able to figure out everything that we value. You know what I mean? I mean, we'll figure it out. We have to figure it out.
Oh, yeah. It's essential.
Hopeful statement. Yeah. Yeah.
So what going on, well, beyond MDMA just being right around the corner? It's like really exciting for you right now.
It is. Yeah. It's like this year, next year?
So I think likely we're going to get FDA approval this year. I don't know that we're going to see it in a clinic until late next year, early 25.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah. So it should be sooner, but
we've
had to jump through hoops long enough. I think we can sit tight for a minute longer. But like, how excited are you about Colorado, Oregon? Are there any other kind of substances that are really interesting in terms of clinical result?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Really thrilled with what's going on and the possibilities with psilocybin. When you say Colorado and Oregon, that's what comes to mind. There's state level legislation across the country kind of pointing at different ways it's going to play out in different states, right? And those two pioneering states are kind of helping other states reimagine how it might look, imagine how it's going to look. That's beautiful. But in particular, one thing that I'm really interested in is iboga or ibogaine, and we've known for so long that particular medicine can help people kick opiates rather effectively. Extremely effectively. And if we are in a opioid epidemic, which we are, the numbers are saying that, can't we get into a situation that fast tracks such a helping substance into the culture? And why isn't that happening?
Kind of happen in Colorado, just not federally.
Okay.
So like we had these things. So the way Colorado went down was decriminalized 4 substances at one go: psilocybin, iboga, mescaline, DMT, and then there's a whole community use thing there for those four. And then working towards a legitimate clinical frame with protection for licensed professionals who are working with psilocybin. So that would be first, a legitimized frame. And the idea was that the state would wait until psilocybin went through, and then the advisory committee could pick the next substance. And they changed it to say, nope, you can actually start on iboga right away, or ibogaine right away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. Like, that's what I'm saying.
Pretty sensible.
If we're in this crisis and we know that the data is showing this, let's go. Speed it up. Speed it up.
Speed it up. So one line I love to throw out is the price of naloxone and test strip. So like a fentanyl test strip is what, $2 roughly, $1 or $2. If you buy enough, the cost goes down. And then naloxone, roughly $100 a dose, I believe, from if you go buy it at CVS or something. A lot of places are giving it away for free. Like Sheriff's Department in my town, you get it for free. How much does it cost to do a first response situation? If not recover a body, right?
Oh, I can't believe you brought that up. This is an intense point.
It's like 30 to 50 grand, right? Maybe more.
So check this out.
Yeah.
Check this out. We had a science involved individual at our department who's actually now working at our department as a police officer. Crunch some numbers around the cost of a emergency call out for an overdose. One cop car, fire truck with the fire people on it, and an emergency medical ambulance shows up with transport, somewhere around $5,000. $5,000 for that part.
That's just to show up.
Just to show up, stabilize the person, take him to the hospital. Roughly speaking, $5,000. Staggering number, happening day by day by day. I mean, if you could just prevent that, never mind the number you came up with. Can you imagine? Right? I mean, we're in an epidemic. Epidemics allow the laws to be loosened, right?
The attitudes are shifting. You're right. Like I have a lot of friends that live in like rural New Hampshire, and there's an attitude for a little while. It's like it's the same people that just keep overdosing. Why don't we just let them die? These are some of my personal friends, and I had to give them a real lecture.
Sure.
Like, holy shit, man. Are you serious?
Just hearing that it causes my body to, start cringing.
Like rural populations with no real education other than like talking heads yelling.
Well, I've heard that sentiment. I felt that sentiment, around here. Yeah, I have, but it's inappropriate.
Yeah, it's anti-human.
Yeah.
And it's great term, subspeciation. It's turning your species into a subspecies or its own species, so you can treat them worse.
Imagine. That's right.
It's a trend we've seen for a long time in humanity. And it's still fresh. We're still doing it.
I think what do you think about this? The base of that is this outdated concept of enabling, like having to do with like a resistance to harm reduction. It's like, passing condoms out increases the likelihood of sexual activity, or passing needles out increases the likelihood of mainlining a substance. It's already happening. It doesn't increase anything. People have sex. People use substances.
A free needle isn't going to convince somebody to shoot for the first time.
Right. But but we know what it might do is prevent infection. Right. Right.
All day long. It's
Condoms
a big
help
deal.
prevent pregnancy and infection.
Punk rock song from forever ago that it's this band 15. They had baked into their song instructions on how to sterilize your own needles. It's fascinating. I was like, whoa, this had to be baked into punk rock music to keep people safe because nobody else was really making meaningful. Yeah, this is like late 90s, I think, when this was going on. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Really sad. Great song. But
wow.
Yeah. Like that's what a situation we're in. Yeah. And you're right. Like there is a sense of like, what is that idea of enabling, but also what's a more intelligent approach than just like, let's paint with broad strokes here.
That's right.
Yeah. How do we
That's right.
make more intelligent decisions and go further and help more people?
How do we keep people alive? Fundamentally, how do we keep people alive? Because they're people and they deserve that.
Yeah.
They deserve assistance.
Yeah. So I guess it feels like we are making that kind of progress. We can't really, it seems very unlikely that we're going to backslide from the ground we've made. There's a long shot it could happen. I can't see how, but
I feel that way as well. But I do run into, and I'm sure you do as well, in some places, and you hear it like those comments about maybe they should die. But it's like some people in very powerful positions still saying, "Don't talk to me about that harm reduction stuff."
Really?
That's
not great.
Or my area or my community, doesn't want that harm reduction stuff. Or, I think if we don't stay proactive and talk about it and put it on the table and have the evidence base, we can oscillate back and then come forward. And every time we oscillate back, people are going to die. People are going to get hurt.
Yeah. I had to explain to somebody this morning, like the methadone situation, and like how like the structure of how it's issued is like really just breeds inequality and like keeps people really, really down. And it's just like ugly. And you just look at that on its face. You go, okay, what are your 10 addiction doctors saying is the move?
Nicely said.
We're not doing it.
Right. And why aren't we doing that? Exactly. Right. Have you heard about I heard this about Portugal, where, you need methadone. They'll show up with methadone to you.
It's amazing.
It's like the completely opposite way it's structured here. I mean, how does it make sense to have one location that's God knows how many miles away from somebody in some part of town that they have to get to and wait in line to get their dose and then go back home every single day?
Brutal.
Yeah.
And there's better ways to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll get there. It's slow. It's obnoxious. I think people need to start stating the facts more loudly. I think coalitions between interest groups could go a long way.
Yeah. I love that point. I mean, the more we are not divided, the more we can get things done. And I think there's enough room in the sandbox for everybody to play with each other.
There's somebody on, I'll tell you this one in more detail offline, but somebody I started going off on Twitter about kind of like drug policy reform, harm reduction, etc., ending the drug war. And somebody had the snarkiest comment ever. Like, thank you for letting me know you're more interested in ending the drug war than helping get patients the access and care they need. It's like fascinating. The person that it came from, I'll tell you later. It's just like, it shocked me.
Oh, gotcha.
To see that kind of attitude.
That's well, if you're doing that here, you're not going to be able to do this over here kind of thing. Right? It's like, no, that's important just as much as this, Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, the priority for me is all at once, but like there's political practicalities on all of these projects we have going.
That's right.
And like, how much good are we really doing if all we've done is brought MDMA therapy legal and made it legal and accessible, when the rest of the drug war's still raging and ruining families for generations, right?
Well, that's a point that drives me in the work that I'm doing and the way that I'm doing it is like, you can't it's just not right to medicalize or recreationalize a substance and still have the system arresting people for it, just like you said.
Cannabis.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So
Colorado, there's a ton of it. Is this still happening here?
I don't have the Massachusetts numbers, but I mean, it's medicalized and recreationalized. So
Yeah, same in Colorado. Somehow we're still getting people arrested for like small quantities of black market grown cannabis. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. We'll get there.
Right.
Anyway, let's end on a high note here. So, like, you're bringing MDMA therapy to a really critical audience that really needs help and support and has been overlooked for a long time in terms of mental health. So thank you for that. It's incredible.
Oh, thank you. Listen, I feel blessed to be able to talk about this stuff, to be able to experience this stuff. And, you know, the way that it all went down is being around and connecting with people. Mm-hmm. Right. So I want to extend gratitude to the teachers and the people that exposed me, shared with me, provided access to me. I feel obligated to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you could say anything to maybe some colleagues or police officers, maybe they're listening in Oklahoma, mm-hmm. like what would you say to those folks mm-hmm. about this psychotherapy with, you know, MDMA-assisted psychotherapy?
I'd say go to some conferences. Mm-hmm. And then after you take some of the educational trainings, go to some of the social events, meet people, mm-hmm. talk to people. We need to come out of silos.
Yeah.
So if you feel like there's a silo, explore as to why that's happening. Mm-hmm. Right? Because where there's us versus them, there's opportunity to repair.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I don't know. Anything else you want to close with or mention here?
Well, just gratitude to you to take the time, to meet up, talk about all these important topics. It was a great pleasure. Yeah, seriously.
Pleasure here as well. I got to brag to all my friends what I was doing. I'm excited. All right, Sarko, until next time, this is going to be fun. And there you have it, everybody. Sarko. I loved that episode. I hope you did too. I think there's a lot of interesting bridge building we can do and peacemaking we can do. So please, you know, consider carefully how you might start introducing these topics to law enforcement professionals that you know, and, you know, carefully for sure. So I think there's a lot here. I would love to do a lot more with Sarko. So hopefully we can. Anyway, I think that's it for right now. Thank you all for tuning into Psychedelics today. We could not do it without you. And I hope you'll tune into the next episode. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Joe Moore signing off for Psychedelics today. See you next time. Bye-bye.